So first up, we have Chris Fredricks, a graphic designer, screen printer, teacher, and occasional entrepreneur. You probably recognize Chris from various CreativeMornings events, AIGA, in his role as agent at KCAD, his studio space OpenCo, and his screen print apparel line, Grow Up Awesome. So please help me welcome Chris Fredricks.
Hey! How's it going? So I'm here today because I was confused, and I'm still a little bit confused. Basically what it came down to is I didn't really know who I was, and I especially didn't know what I did or how to explain it well. It mostly came up at events like this. Before, earlier, someone asked me what I did, and I was like, well, I know the answer now, but I don't want to ruin my whole talk, so I didn't get into it. But typically, what I would do is list off pretty much everything I've done in the past 15 years, and still do a little bit of once in a while when someone asks me to. So I was lacking some focus. That's a long time to go to college, you'll notice, first of all. It wasn't a solid decade. There were a couple years off. But I kind of set myself up early, not having focus. So I didn't want to go to college. Basically, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I thought I was going to start a record label, and I did when I was a senior in high school. I was like, and that's what I was going to do the rest of my life. But it didn't work out. So I went to school for business administration for an associate's degree, and I wanted to keep going to school for some reason. My wife and I decided to move to Baltimore. The only reason for that was we knew some people there, and it wasn't here. We were bored of here. So we went to Baltimore, and that's where I did most of my schooling. I went to school for film and video. When I got there, I intended on sticking with business, and I had met a new friend who is kind of like a philosopher-type character. And he asked me a very important question. He said, what are you going to do with a business degree? And I had no answer. So then he asked, what do you want to do? And I became a film major, because I always liked movies, and I always thought I would be like a director or something cool like that. While we were in Baltimore, we had our first kid and our second kid, Cash Donnelly, and there are more kids to come. Spoiler. When I graduated from my degree in film, it was like right around the time the economy was tanking, and the film incentives were leaving Baltimore, like they left here a couple years afterwards. So I decided to go get an MFA in design, because why not? I'd always dabbled in design, and it was something that I learned from an early point on, and I carried it through film school, so it seemed like a good idea. One of my favorite Kurt Vonnegut quotes, I think, sums up my college experience, and it's, I tell you, we are here on earth to fart around, and don't let anybody tell you different. So it's my college years, or my farting around years. So we moved back to Michigan, mostly economic reasons, and because we had kids and we had family here. I sent in my resume based on a Craigslist ad for a company called Sunbum, who had an office in Grand Rapids. And I got offered a job at the interview, which is a sweet way to get a job. It's only happened once. So I really liked working at Sunbum. It was a design-focused company. The people that branded Sunbum also ran it. So I learned a ton. I learned a lot in school, but I learned a lot more at Sunbum. I felt like my varied skills were valuable there, because it was a small office, so they needed random things to be done. And I was having conversations about brand strategy without even knowing that it was called brand strategy at the time. And it was just an exciting place to work. It was like a startup atmosphere, sales multiplied by 20 in the 4 years that I was there. And it was cool. So while I was working at Sunbum, we were back in Michigan, I started a side project I had dabbled in called Grow Up Awesome, which was me designing t-shirts, screen printing them, selling them at markets. Then I also started teaching as an adjunct at Kendall. And we had our third and fourth kid at the same time. So that means they were twins. Teaching at Kendall, I was taking basically whatever classes they would give me. Started with typography. I taught a couple more. And that was a lot of fun. So a lot of times our identity is tied to our job, and it makes it a lot easier to focus when you have a job, because when people ask you what you do, you can say, I'm a designer, I work for Sunbone. But Sunbone moved. So Sunbone moved to California. They offered me a job there, but I didn't want to go to California. I'd already done the very typical West Michigan thing of moving away and coming back. So it seemed like a rerun if I left again. So Sunbone left. I decided to freelance to kind of fill in the gaps and kind of look for jobs in a half-assed sort of way. Not super seriously. So we're still in Michigan, we were not moving, we were definitely had enough kids. To grow up, awesome thing, picked up a little bit, I did more markets. That kind of filled in a little bit of the gaps with income, but not quite all the way, not even close. As adjunct at Kendall, I started teaching branding too often, basically every semester. And as I was teaching branding too, and I was helping students go through brand positioning statements and kind of try to figure out the story of a brand and the value that a brand is offering, I started thinking, how does that apply to me? And what do people think of me? There's a really popular branding book called The Brand Gap, and what it says is, it's not what you think you are, it's what they think you are. And when I thought about what people thought I was as a professional, it was terrifying. Like the people I worked with or sold things to, you could have given you lots of answers. So designer, web designer, screen t-shirt guy, video maker, etc. And I didn't really want to be a t-shirt guy. So just knowing there's a few people that only think I'm a t-shirt guy seemed kind of sad. Nothing wrong with t-shirts. T-shirts are great. The best part of not having enough employment and being able to not go to work at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. was hanging out with these two, Margot and Eleanor, and watching cartoons in the morning. So I typically got to my studio around 10 a.m. So, on to the past couple months. That's how long it took. Basically kind of knowing about brand strategy, it took me a long time to actually apply it to myself. I think I was a little scared to figure out what I was, and I was scared to give up some of that work that wasn't really within my focus. But this picture is from last Tuesday, and I taught my first self-branding workshop. About 25 people showed up to my studio. I actually read a book on tidying. It's Japanese, you should check it out. And my studio is clean for the first time ever. It's crazy. So basically there we walked through people's personal brands and tried to figure out who they were. This is me working through my brand positioning statement. And one thing I do with my students, I use some of those tools and apply them to me. So brand archetype is basically, there's all these characters throughout film and novels and history that we already have in our head. So if you can apply your brand to an archetype, it gives you like an advantage because there's already some familiarity with that. And then my wife is really into Enneagram, which is a personality test, and I'm a peacemaker. And both those things are about being like humble and friendly and avoiding conflict and trying to help people. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And then my focus, because I've been teaching branding for 2.5 years, I think that's what my focus became, because every conversation I had about design revolved around branding, and that's how I explain myself, that's how I pitch projects, that's the story I can tell. And it made me more excited about design, because it kind of like put all the pieces together and everything made a little more sense. My attributes, which is where I usually start, is I'm not a pain in the ass to work with. That's part of being an everyman and a peacemaker. I'm not looking to start fights, but I do like a good conversation. I'm an idea generator, I'm a brainstormer, I'm entrepreneurial, I'm a storyteller, and I'm straightforward, but again, not in like a pain in the ass way, I like it a little bit. And my value is offering brand-focused design and marketing. So in 2017, my plan is to, I'm not really like a resolution guy, but I actually made like a list of goals because someone told me to. I plan on having more branding workshops, and I plan on talking to more individuals about branding, because I really didn't figure myself out until I started helping other people figure themselves out. So I'm going to keep doing that. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Next up, we have Ian Lavardi, the design director at Mighty in the Midwest, a web app and app design and development company. He's also the person I look at for 9 hours a day. He sits right across from me. So it's great to have him here. You've probably seen him around Creative Mornings events or likely somewhere on Lake Michigan with his wife Shelby and their 3 kids. He's designed in agencies and startups as an independent and as the creative director for an award-winning mental health technology platform. Before joining Mighty, he spent 2 years launching and growing a secure web app for psychologists. Please help us welcome Ian.
Good morning. Thank you for that great intro, Molly. It's a privilege to be up here, and I just want to shout out to Molly because she does so much to make this happen. And sitting across from her, I get a little bit of inside look into just all the work that goes into this. So we have a tremendous lead person for this event. So this morning, I want to talk about how we develop ourselves, and I want to talk about some of the things that I've kind of picked up along the way. I want to make sure I don't stand in front of the presenter screen there. I want to talk about identity. I want to talk about the role of identity, ourselves, who we are, and authenticity. And it's really cool what you just talked about because I think we didn't know what we were going to be. We were talking about something that fits so well together, but brand and identity really go together nicely. Because I think sometimes when we get it wrong, we get identity and we get authenticity kind of wrong, which is what I did for a while. It can trip us up. And it can begin to hurt some of the things that we're most passionate about, our work and the people that we interact with. So I want to talk about mystery as it relates to us. I want to talk about the mystery of us and our identity and kind of what that's about. Like I said, as a designer, I wrestled with this for a long time, and I struggled a little bit to kind of find my way through this. And what I mean by that is that we often think we're striving to become something, but often we're either modeling ourselves against something that isn't aligned with who we actually are on the inside. Or worse, we've allowed others to shape it for us. And this changes how we view our own identity, but that doesn't actually bring us closer to what we want to be. And so I think the thing about that is misalignment changes how we see ourselves. It changes how we view our own development in a lot of ways. And for me, this kind of growth and this process of growing and feeling some of that misalignment can also contribute to imposter syndrome. I think a lot of us are probably familiar with what imposter syndrome is all about. It's this idea that, deep down I'm a fraud. I'm not who everybody thinks I am. I'm somehow less than, and my accomplishments are just a succession of luck and good fortune, not something that I contribute to. And psychologists who study imposter syndrome, it's really kind of interesting. They find that it's high-performing people. It's people who set high goals for themselves, high standards for themselves. Those are the people that often struggle the most with imposter syndrome. And I think a lot of it has to do with this alignment issue that we face. So I didn't overcome this feeling. I didn't overcome these things from achieving something and from kind of arriving at some place in my career. That's kind of what I always imagined would happen. I've arrived at this pinnacle of my career and I'll have achieved this thing, and all of a sudden I'll be able to step out and feel like I'm there. And that's not really where it came from. What it came from was understanding who I am. Back to what you were talking about that sort of brand and internal identity. It came from understanding who I am. And secondarily, it came from understanding that we're all made of the same thing. We all kind of face a lot of these same things. So I wanted to talk a little bit about authenticity, because authenticity is this thing that is this gold standard for us right now. And I think a lot of it has to do with the time that we live in. We've got these different personas and hats that we wear. We've got social media presences that we're a part of, a Twitter feed to maintain, a cool Instagram feed to maintain, a portfolio, LinkedIn if you're older, all these different things that we try to maintain personas with. And authenticity is being true to who we are, but growth and these personas are about striving to be something more, right? So it's this disconnect from those two things. And that can create some distance, I think, from our identity and from who we are on the inside, that dissonance in the middle there. And then I think when this accumulates, it contributes to making that fuzzier and fuzzier, and at its worst, it can really start to lead to dissatisfaction. It can really start to lead to some burnout. I want to be something different. I want to do something different. I just want to think differently. somehow about life and about my work. So if any of this sounds familiar, I want to challenge you about growing authentically, and then I want to talk a little bit about how to grow strategically in a way that aligns with your identity. How do we grow in a way and develop in a way that keeps us true to kind of who we are? So I'm a dad. I'm a dad of 3. My wife and I have 3 kids. Show these over here. Shout out to my wife. This is my son Wilson, Chef Wilson. He's our 6-year-old. At our house on the weekends we do breakfast together as a family. It's kind of our thing. Turn on some music. We just kind of hang out and we cook together. And Wilson loves this because he wants to be a chef. He's been talking about being a chef for like a year. I don't know where this started. This is just like totally him. This is what he wants to do. So when it's time to make pancakes, Wilson gets his chef hat on. He comes out, he puts his white button-down shirt from somewhere. He puts his apron on. Also goes a mustache. Mustache and chef. That's the way he imagines it. But what I love about it is that he puts on this role and he models this identity because he's trying to imagine himself in this. This is how he develops. He tries things on. What occurred to me as I watched this and as I observed him is that this is how kids develop, right? Kids try things on, they model behavior, they model things that they want to be until they find something that feels really good and fits with who they are. And somehow, as adults, we lose sight of that. And we, at some point along the way, we've established this identity that we think this is who I am, and we begin to lose the value of modeling things and trying things out. And the thing I think is that modeling behavior, modeling who we want to be isn't actually bad. It's when it begins to disconnect from our identity, from who we are, that it becomes troublesome. And that's how it was for me until I discovered something of my own, and that is that I have to model specific areas in others that I need to improve in myself without letting that person become my identity. And it's an important distinction to make that it's all about me modeling behavioral things and issues and weaknesses in myself that I want to improve on without becoming some other person. And I don't think I'm alone in this. I have a friend who's a developer. We've been friends for a number of years, and he's changed jobs a lot over the last few years. And the reason is that for him, he looks at growth and development. He imagines what I think a lot of us have sensed in our fields that, okay, when I've reached a certain point, growth means managing, it means leading people, right? And that's not him. It's just not him. And part of some of the tension that he's felt in some of the roles that he's had over the last few years, because he steps into things and he begins to try to manage and lead people, and it doesn't feel right. It feels kind of off. And as we've talked about, it's only been recently that he's kind of come to this conclusion that, you know what, the reason isn't that I shouldn't grow, it's that I'm growing the wrong way. I'm trying to model myself against the wrong things, and I need to find a way to model myself in a way that's more aligned with who I am. So how do we tell if we're out of this alignment? How do we tell when we are kind of sensing some of this misalignment? So I think there's 2 things to this. I think number one, we have to understand what our identity is, and we have to understand what guides us. It's like we were just talking about brand, that kind of brand exercise of ourselves, and understanding what that is. And it's a little bit of a mystery because it changes all the time. I think that's kind of the interesting thing about our identity is that it changes so often. But that's normal. It's normal for us to change. When I was originally thinking about this, I was thinking like, it's like identity is like this anchor, right? It's something that kind of holds us to something. And then as I thought about it more, I was like, no, it's not really the right analogy because an anchor, you're tied to a point in time, you're tied to a thing. And it's really more like something that goes with us. It's really more like a compass that we walk with or run with. And we're navigating terrain all the time. We're navigating terrain of life. And so it's a little bit like, to me, we're running through the woods with this compass. I mean, we know where we're going. We have something that's kind of able to guide us instead of course, but we have to navigate around things, obstacles, trees, down ravines. But we know where we're going. We can change that direction at any point in time. But we can operate with that confidence of knowing that we have something to guide us. So I think the second thing is we have to focus on how to be the best version of ourselves instead of a better someone else. Last year I was at a conference and the CEO was talking about how she does strategic growth for herself and how she sets high standards for herself. And she used this story of this analogy of a superstar. you guys probably, some of you probably heard this, where she imagines, what if a superstar showed up and did my job? What are the 4 things that they would change right now about how I operate? And I thought, man, that's cool. Like, I can get behind that. I can totally imagine, you know, as a design director, if a superstar walked in and they took over my job, what are the 4 things they would, yep, this, okay, these are some things I need to go after. And as I was thinking about it more and more, I thought, man, they're really good at my job. And like, they do things like way better than I do, and they also don't have like some of these like issues that I have, and some of these things about me that are hard to overcome. And what made me realize was that I need to think about that a little bit differently. So I took her idea and I modified it. What we create to steal things and modify them and make them better and make them harder. I took her idea and I thought, you know, what if it was a super me that walked into my office and walked into my room? I don't should have an office to sit across from mine. What if a super me showed up and it had my identity, it had my skills, and also had my weaknesses, but was performing at a different level? What would they change? And I think in the midst of that, it forced me to evaluate my own strengths, my own weaknesses, and I think it's a really good exercise for us to do. I think it's happening. Making that list of some of our own attributes, some of our own brand attributes. So a couple of takeaways here. We need to learn over performance. We need to embrace the act of learning more than performance, especially when we're growing and we're developing. And what that is, it kind of harkens back to that idea of being a kid and trying on different things and modeling behavior and understanding what fits and what doesn't fit. And the value in that is what we learn. Not that we perform really, really well for that, but we have to make sure it aligns with who we are on the inside. Then we have to exercise vulnerability with a few. Vulnerability isn't the same as authenticity. It's not the same as transparency. We can't be vulnerable with everybody. But we need to find some people in our life that we can be vulnerable with and can help us stay true to who we are. And just a side note about imposter syndrome, because I mentioned it. Imposter syndrome is something that's a real hurdle for you. I think one of the things that really helps is to find somebody that you can say, I feel like a fraud, to. And I feel like a fraud in this way, and it's keeping me, the fear that's around that is keeping me from moving forward. And if you don't have that person, I put my email address up here, it's a little bit hard to see, which is ian@ianlibrary.com, email me. And I will be that sounding board because I've experienced imposter syndrome. I experienced it this morning. I experienced it a little bit during this time. And then remember that the mystery is that you and your values and your strengths change and expect it to change. And it's okay if it changes. It's okay if your identity grows with you as you go through the woods of life. And then remember that we're all made out of the same stuff. We're all in this together. This is a great big community of people around you who are wired very similarly and face similar challenges. So support each other. We're here